beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and today I have a Beauty Bay haul for you. First, I was just going to purchase this botanical palette, which I'm sure if you take one look at it, you'll understand why I was so drawn to this. But then, of course, one thing led to another. I started shopping around a little bit. So I did end up purchasing a few other things. I got a couple of their hydrating lip tints. I love a lip tint. I also purchased a bunch of their cream blushes, which I'm only going to use these two in today's video, but I think I'm going to make a whole separate video so that I can swatch and review these and so you can see a few more of them going on. These are interesting because they're not a dewy finish, they're more of a satin finish. So I think that my friends who have been struggling with the dewier cream blushes that have been coming out this year, which personally I love. I have dry skin, so I love a dewy blush, but not everybody does. So I think these are an interesting option for those of you who don't want that really dewy look. So I want to take you through all of these products. I'll show you close-ups, swatches, of course. I also have a few interesting comparisons for this botanical palette. And of course, I'll show you a tutorial. I'm wearing a bunch of these products on my face today. That way you can see them in action as well. So let's take a close-up look starting with the hydrating lip tints.
The two hydrating lip tint duos I got are the Love and Slippers duo and the Scotch and Brownie duo. There is a third color option, but it's out of stock right now. And these are regularly priced at $17 a piece for the duo, but they are on sale right now for just under 12. So if this ends up being something that you're interested in, I'm not sure if this is just a limited time sale or if they're discontinuing these, but this is a good time to grab either one of these duos if it's something that you think might work well for you. I don't love that I can't see the color on the packaging. I know that's a small gripe. They are labeled on the bottom, but I personally just wish there was a little window that we could see through to the color, something like that. The cream blush packaging is a little bit more serviceable, in my opinion. I love these colors. I will say the shades are beautiful. I absolutely can see myself wearing all four of these shade-wise. Texture-wise, they're fine. They're definitely not hydrating for me. Now, they don't dry out my lips, but they're also not giving me any sort of hydrating feeling as well. But I ended up not liking these. I'll show you at the end of the video when I wrap up all of my thoughts on these products after wearing them for a while. But these ended up not working for me, not really being my favorite. Definitely not the worst lip product I've ever tried by any means. Not terrible, just not great. You'll see at the end of the video. Next up is the liquid cream blush. There are 6 shades in this blush formula. I'm going to show you 2 here. I actually do have all 6 in my possession. And I want to do a dedicated video where I show you blended out swatches. I want to show you more of the colors in action. And I just love playing with blush. I'm doing a big roundup of all the different liquid blushes I've tried so far in the year. So I would love to give these a dedicated review in order to make that video, the blush roundup video, as well researched as possible. I much prefer the packaging for the blushes over those of the lip tints. I just think that being able to see through to the shade you're grabbing is incredibly useful. I'm going to show you both of these shades applied layered on my cheeks, but I'm going to start with just the lighter color Spring first. So I did apply quite a bit of this color, and I'm glad that I did because while this blends out really smoothly, it definitely doesn't retain as much pigmentation on my cheeks as some of the other liquid blush products that I've tried recently. But I did find this to look really soft and natural. It blended in easily with my fingertips, and I like the texture of this blush a lot. It has a whipped, sort of moussey feeling, and I think that a lot of people are going to enjoy this particular blush formula because it blends out really easily, but it also lasts for a long time. I wore all of this makeup, except for the lip tint, all day, and the blush and eyeshadow both were pretty much perfectly intact by the end of the day, which is saying something. It's hot, it's humid, it's rainy, it's not the most amazing weather for long-lasting makeup where I live, and these blushes hung on really nicely, so I'm impressed. Blush is usually one of the first things to fade on me. I also like that this blush blends out really beautifully with the brush. I think that it retains more of its pigmentation with the stippling brush application method. So it's also nice to know that not only can you layer these colors and mix them to get a custom blush look, but you can also turn up or turn down the volume on the intensity of the pigmentation just depending on what kind of look you're going for. I think that's always nice. For a long time, I think there was this idea that more pigmented equals better, and that's just not the case from person to person or even just day to day for the same person. I know for me, sometimes I want something that's really neutral, natural, barely there, and sometimes I want to really turn up the volume and the drama. It just depends on how I'm feeling that day, what I'm doing that day. So I think this is a really nice little blush formula. I quite like it, and I think that people who have been struggling with the really dewy blushes that have been coming out lately are also going to like this even more than I do. But I do like it quite a bit. Now let's move on to the star of the show, at least in my opinion, because we would not be here if it wasn't for this botanical palette. This is what I originally went to the Beauty Bay site looking for. This is a 20 color palette and it's priced at 22 US dollars. It is labeled as both cruelty free and vegan, so a safe one for all my vegan friends out there. The outer carton lists all of the ingredients. The palette itself does not have the ingredient list, so if you are somebody with specific interest in ingredients, whether it's for an allergy or something like that, make sure you hang on to the box for your reference. This palette does have a nice big mirror inside. I like a palette with a big mirror, especially if I plan on using it for traveling, and I think this would be a great travel palette for me. This palette has a lightweight cardboard packaging, and the palette itself has a magnetic closure. Of the 20 eyeshadows in here, 11 are mattes and 9 are shimmers. I like a nice even split between mattes and shimmers, and this is pretty close, so I feel this is incredibly useful for my personal style. And we do have a couple of these shades that have a little shifty duochrome type of vibe to them, particularly Waterfall and Quartz. I think the layout of this palette is really smart because each one of the columns or rows could lend to a pretty nice, well-rounded look. So I think this is a smart layout. It's very user-friendly. So I really appreciate that. Obviously, you don't have to use it in that way, but if you're somebody that is overwhelmed by a larger palette, I mean, 20 pans is a larger palette in my opinion, that's a good place to start. It's a good jumping off point, and it really just makes it easy, especially if you're in a rush, to just go to one column or one row, grab those shades, and create your look from there. Performance wise, the one shadow that I've really struggled with is that super soft pastel green shade called Matcha. That one I've just had a hard time getting to really show up for me. Otherwise, I do think that these shadows perform better with a brush than with the finger swatch. I think that's pretty apparent here, and it's definitely more apparent on the eyes to me as well. The mattes definitely work better with a brush than with these finger swatches, which isn't usually the case for me, so I find that to be pretty interesting. But I am doing a lot of my matte application with brushes anyway, so it's not really a deal breaker or anything. It's just an interesting thing that I've noticed. I think these are A bit softer, definitely thinner. If you are comparing these to something like an Odin's Eye or a Nomad Cosmetics, these are a softer, thinner, kind of that thin, silky type of formula. I'm having a hard time coming up with a good comparison for the mattes. I think the shimmers are pretty similar to what I would expect from a ColourPop shimmer. So definitely not a super intense, foily, in your face shimmer. But at least for me, I think that these slightly drier feeling shimmers where they're not that squishy, thick, foily type of metallic shadow, which for the record, I love really, really foily shadows. But I do find that these slightly thinner, slightly drier shimmer formulas last a really, really long time on my lids. So I think there's a place for both, at least in my personal collection and my style. I have my time where I want those big, thick, foily, intense metallic shimmers. And then there are other times where these slightly thinner, drier shimmers are what I'm looking for when I want to trade some of that high impact for a longer or less creasy wear. Hopefully that made sense. In general, this formula is not my personal favorite, but it's also definitely not bad. I think you can tell here the mattes blended and applied quite smoothly. It's not a super high impact pigmented matte shadow, but not everybody wants that. So I don't think there's anything wrong. Again, there's space in my world for both versions, and the shimmers are still incredibly beautiful on the eye, even though they're not, this mega foiled metallic. They're still impactful, shimmery, shiny, some more so than others. I gravitated more towards the incredibly metallic looking shadows, especially since I used two shifty shades. I think that really ups the ante on the eyelid shimmer. At the end of the day, for a $22 palette, this is above and beyond my expectation. I'm not expecting an indie brand level of shine and shift and pigmentation from a palette. Let's face it, if this was from one of these US indie brands, which for the record, I love them. But if this same size palette came from a US indie brand, it would cost $80 probably. And not everybody can or wants to spend 70, $80 on a palette. So I think this is really quite lovely. I'm impressed with the performance, especially the wear time. And all around, this is the type of palette that I see myself enjoying, traveling with, using quite a bit, and even using as a companion palette for something that is more bold and needs more of a neutral touch. At the end, my look turned out really, really pretty. I loved wearing this all day. I could see myself wearing this day to night. As I mentioned previously, this wore incredibly well. It held up for many hours in the heat and humidity for me with very minimal creasing. So, an impressive performance formula wise. This would also look really pretty with a little bit of lower waterline liner and a little half lash. If I wanted to do a more dramatic, more smoky looking version, I could easily turn up the volume on a look like this. If I wanted to make it a little bit more evening, at least for me, that's more evening. If that's your everyday, I love that for you. Keep doing what you're doing. I am not here to tell you that you're wrong. I am here to give you some comparisons, though. Of course, the first thing that popped into my mind is my now discontinued Flora Story palette that I did in collaboration with Odin's Eye. Obviously, we have some very similar shades in here, but it's a similar theme, right? Botanical, flora story. Of course, we're going to touch on some of the same notes there, and that's to be expected. I don't think any of these are exact dupes, especially texture wise. You can tell just from these finger swatches that that's the case, but it's even more obvious in person when you really touch these side by side. Similar color stories come out all the time, and just looking at this selection is one thing, but the botanical palette is a much larger palette, has a bunch of other shades. The packaging's really different. There is one shade name that's sort of similar, but again, that's to be expected. I don't think there's really anything to it. I just think it's one of those things that happens all the time. And frankly, this Nomad Ghost Town USA palette is much more of a dupe, in my opinion. This is absolutely the closest to a dupe that I'm going to show you in this entire video. So if you already have the Ghost Town USA palette, then you definitely don't need the botanical palette. Personally, I prefer the Nomad formula over the Beauty Bay formula, and I also think that the Ghost Town theming is just a lot more interesting. Ghost Town is currently sold out, but I know that it's coming back for spooky season. So maybe if you have the extra cash on hand, I would recommend Ghost Town USA over Botanical, but just sort of a personal preference thing for me. Now, the Longing palette from Blend Bunny is not as similar as I thought it was going to be. These really warm pinky colors in the Botanical palette just don't have anything even remotely close in the Longing palette. But on the other hand, if you are drawn to the more cool toned aspect of the botanical palette, but you're looking for a little bit more intensity pigmentation wise, then Blend Bunny's Longing palette might be a better option for you. The last comparison I'm going to do is combining the Jewels and Gem and Stone and Rock palettes, also from Odin's Eye. These are also pretty similar. I think this is the next best thing to the Ghost Town USA palette. So if you already have Jewels and Gem and Stone and Rock, then again, you probably don't need to spring for Botanical. Obviously, these are not exact dupes, especially formula-wise. You can tell the Odin's Eye, especially the shimmers, but all around is just a lot more intense, a lot more shifty and foily, but the mattes are also more intense and more pigmented. So again, it comes down to what is your preference with that.
I have a very definitive first, second, and third place. For me, the hydrating lip tints are my least favorite. They just wear off really quickly. I don't feel like I'm getting a good stain from them. I was definitely expecting something more similar to the ColourPop Fresh Kiss Glossy Lip Stains. I love those. These don't feel as hydrating as I expected. They feel very neutral on the hydration front. They're not drying my lips out, but they're also not hydrating. And they're wearing off really quickly, and they keep making this really weird, very unfortunate looking line on my lips that I'm gonna be honest, don't love. Don't love that. Do you see that? What is that? Right in the middle are these liquid cream blushes. I love a cream blush, so I'm very predisposed to liking these. I don't love the shade range. I wish that I had some more options shade-wise, but I do think these are a really, really nice option for folks who don't want that dewy finish on a cream blush, especially if you have a more oily skin type and you find that cream blushes are just kind of sliding off. This has a moussey texture that I feel would probably work better. I can't say for sure. I don't have oily skin, but my guess is this could be an interesting option for people with that combo oily skin type. And I think it looks pretty good. So those are in the middle. No surprise, first place for me is the eyeshadow palette. This is just my type of color story. I love jewel tones. I love that this is half neutral, half colorful, pretty much exactly half and half. I like that we have a fairly even balance between mattes and shimmers. I like that we have some really true neutral undertones in here. I love a bright silver. I love green. I love purple. We have a lot of my favorite colors in here. So in general, this really works for me. I would love to know what you think about these products. Have you tried any of these things? Have you had a similar experience, different experience? I always love to hear what you think about things too. So make sure you leave all your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! My camera keeps acting up. I think it might be time to upgrade to a new camera. That sounds expensive. I'm probably gonna have to pause 100 times while I'm filming this because she's really on edge right now. We've been having thunderstorms like almost every day for over a week now. And it's sunny and nice right now, but it just shifts so quickly, and she's just so on edge that literally anytime like a leaf blows off the trees outside, she freaks out, starts barking. So I'm giving her extra love and attention. Don't worry, she's fine. She's just, she's got some PTSD from her time in the streets. I don't know if I ever really talked about her story. We got her from a rescue organization and she was an adult stray, so she did not know how to dog at all. She didn't respond to her name. She didn't know how to walk on a leash. She still only half the time follows our commands. She's very strong-willed, but she's also just really anxious and really skittish. And she has us. We understand. We give her a very comfortable life, so she's fine. It's just, she's a little on edge because of all the storms. Poor gal. I've been giving her extra treats and taking advantage of when it's not raining to take her on extra walks so that she can just get some of those nerves out. And that seems to help a little bit, but she's a really good girl. She's a little ball of anxiety sometimes, which I mean, relatable. Who isn't? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people aren't, but hi. Okay, let's pay attention. I'm an adult. This is very much like a large version of Flora Story, in my opinion. The formulas aren't the same, though. I still prefer the Odin's Eye formula, but that's just me. This is good. It's just Odin's Eye is better. Just like, what was I saying? Where was I? Great. I don't like that. Weird. What? 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 Not nailing it. Not nailing it. I would say let me know if you want to see more looks with this, but my dedicated tutorial videos have just been performing so badly on YouTube, which is fine. I'm not here to complain, but if you don't see me doing them anymore, that's why. It literally hurts my channel to post them. Even though I like doing them, maybe I just need to open up a YouTube membership and post those types of videos there. I don't know. I'll keep workshopping those ideas, but you'll still see looks in reviews, obviously, but the dedicated tutorial videos, multiple look videos, probably gonna hit the pause button on those for a while. Sorry. Maybe I should do some short form. That could be an interesting option. Anyway, I'm just doing my best to balance between what is actually beneficial for my channel and what I want to do. We'll figure it out, don't worry. I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway. All right, we did it. We did it. Good job, team. Thanks for hanging out. You're the best. You're the coolest. You are the brightest crayon in the box. Have you ever heard that phrase? Because I just flipped it around. You're the neon one. You know that like really bright neon pink one? Yeah, that's you. Thanks for watching. I love your face so much, and I will see you in another video very soon. Adios.